Supernatural Season 11, Episode 5, Thin Lizzie. Now, this episode was very interesting to me because, coming off of the last episode, which is a crazy good episode, I was wondering what they were going to do with this, and then they do the recap, and it's like, oh, it's going to be like, kind of an old school ghost episode. And then when they kind of went through a little bit early in the episode, I thought for sure we were going to get the ghost faces again, even though I know they're technically broken up. I was like, I forgot that when I was watching. I actually just remembered that. But I was like, I think we might get a Ghostfaces episode because they have the kids in the room and stuff, and it's like, this is supposed to happen and that's supposed to happen. And then they actually get killed off. It's like, okay. So probably no Ghostfacers, but we do get this B&B and museum thing, and they kind of make fun of Sam. Like, this episode was very interesting because honestly, it started off as like sort of a typical episode. It had its jokes and stuff. And then this episode got like super serious. Like I think after they met the guy who was like taking pictures, it got super serious. And it was like once we found out he didn't have a soul, like there was still some other parts, like when they were in the car and he was just annoying them. That was definitely funny. But I felt like this episode was oddly serious. Like it got like really serious, and it got me thinking. Like some parts were really good. They got me thinking. But when I was first going through it, I was like, at some points I was honestly a little bored. I was like, man, they haven't made a joke in a long time, and it felt weird. Like just how serious some of the scenes were, because there were honestly like a lot of just big chunks of the episode. It felt like there was no comedy in it, and I thought that was weird. I was like, that's admittedly slightly boring because it's supernatural. Like any other show would be like, no jokes, no big deal. But this isn't like CSI. This is supernatural. Like they do lots of jokes. And they did a lot, like I said in the beginning, they still had some jokes here and there, but it felt like there were a lot of jokes missing. But I did enjoy this episode. Initially, I was kind of bored for a little bit, like when there were like no jokes at all, and it was just like them just going through it. I was a little bored thinking about it, and now I think that was like right before they got to the soul stuff. It was like right before we found out that Amara was in this episode, and right after they found out that everything in the B&B was fake. It was just like serious stuff. It was just like stuff was happening, and it was just like meh to me. But overall, I like this episode a lot because it got me thinking about how they changed certain things with characters. Like, oh, we get introduced to two characters this episode that lost their souls, and we even get references to like Sam when he didn't have a soul, which was one of the jokes and things. Like, yeah, you were like a walk in the park. He said something even funnier than that. It was like, yeah, you were just like a ray of sunshine or something. And, these two characters were so drastically different. And my favorite character was definitely the guy, because he was the one who, despite losing his soul, instead of just being like, oh, he went and just killed someone, like, which is like kind of the generic thing, like you either just kill people or, in Sam's case, he was just like killing demons, or in that one episode with Dean, he let him become a vampire because he knew it would help the case. And that was kind of like how we figured out he doesn't have a soul, because that was effing insane. But this guy, he had a very different reaction to losing his soul. And instead of going nuts or anything like that, he actually faked kind of being himself, which I thought was very interesting because we've never had that before, where someone lost their soul and then they kept being themselves because that's just who they were. They were kind of he was keeping up appearances about himself, and throughout the whole thing, it's like he wanted to feel whole again. He wanted to get his soul back, and he knew that things were weird. It was like, he doesn't feel a certain way. Like, even when he helps Sam and Dean at the end and he kills the actual killer, he kills her, and it's like, nothing. Like, it was like, I knew I should help you, but I didn't actually feel anything for you or even for killing this woman. But, like this whole time I kind of, fake it till you make it sort of thing. And I love that about that character because it was just something we never had. And that's what made me like it so much. And, Amara being in this episode was just like, oh, she's just there to steal people's souls. And kind of be creepy and kind of stalk Dean just a little bit. Like at the end they're driving away and she's like, bye Dean. Or she either said bye or I'll see you later. And I'm pretty sure she said like, I'll see you later. But it was just like, she was just kind of there a little bit, and the fact that she was there shows that she's drawn to Dean. It's not just like, oh, they can, they'll protect each other. She's actually drawn to Dean, because otherwise she wouldn't have known, anything that was going on there. And she mentions like how she did look up whoever the woman was. It was like Lizzie. It was Lizzie something, and like she mentioned, like, oh no, she was crazy. Like she's totally the one that killed her parents and stuff. It was just she was kind of crappy about it and stuff like that. So it was interesting that she was there to begin with, but it was totally because she was, I guess, just able to sense Dean, and she can get to where he's at. I of course don't know how the whole hell thing works, if they have portals or if it's like going to heaven. I know there are portals that exist because we had the whole purgatory portal and stuff, but I don't know. Like, I mean, she was just there, like she could sense Dean, and then just so that she could grow was basically like, yeah, this guy, I'm just gonna take his soul, I'm gonna take her soul. Very different reactions, because the woman, she kind of had the reaction we always see. Your soul is gone, you just become a killer, and so she's like an axe murderer now. She's killing people in the hotel, and that was pretty much it. She had issues with certain people. I can't remember her reasoning for killing the couple in the beginning, or now I remember now. She was basically, either the guy cheated on her or he just flat out dumped her and went straight to dating this woman like basically the next day. So she was mad about that, killed the two of them. She killed the owner, the mother, because she like cheap, kind of screwed her out of like a week's pay or 2 weeks pay. So she had her reasons, like, she was mad and she went and killed those people. And her idea was like, I need to see Amara again, because she was almost like in a state of ecstasy where it was like she was on drugs or something after she lost her soul. And it was just amazing to her. And she wanted to just be with Amara all the time. And then we have the other side of the coin where he's like, I just want to be me again. And I'm pretending to be me, but I'm not 100%, because he mentioned how he sold all his ghost stuff on eBay. And it's like, that's not something that he ever would have done. And it's like, it just belongs to somebody else now. Like some guy, in another state, that's who it belongs to. And like I said, that's what made me love this episode, because of him and his very unique reaction to losing his soul. And especially the ending. The ending was like insanely like deep to me, because he, even without a soul, this guy had like enough of a conscience to say, I'm gonna turn myself in because I don't want to kill anyone. He didn't have that harsh desire to like just murder people and stuff. And it was similar to Sam, where Sam wasn't like just killing people. There were certain times where he kind of lost it and fought people, and he killed somebody that was innocent, I believe, and that kind of came back to bite him in the butt once he had a soul. But this guy was like, fake it till you make it. I just want to be me. And right now, we haven't seen any real cure, aside from when the devil went and got Sam's soul. Aside from that, we don't really know how anyone can, if they even can, get their souls back. So he's like, well, if there's no real cure, I'm going to turn myself in because I don't want to kill anyone, which he easily still could. In prison, he could still just get that urge and kill someone. But he's like, I don't just want to kill someone, and I know it'll happen because it's just in there in the back of my head. Like, I've done it once, and then I'll just be curious enough, and without a soul, kind of being amoral, I'll just do what I want. It's not exactly to be evil, but it would just be a consequence of not having my soul, is that I would end up killing someone again. So I'm going to turn myself in and kind of do the right thing before I end up doing the wrong thing and killing some innocent person. And it just made me love the episode, to be totally honest. Like, I initially kind of had my doubts about it, because it was weird that it went from, the jokes that we had. They had, like, a lot of jokes in the beginning, and they had jokes about even Cass, like, watching, I'm pretty sure it was The Wire. He was watching, like, season 2 of The Wire. And so it was like, they had tons of jokes, and then it seemed like there was just a big chunk where it was like, it was just dialogue. There were, like, no jokes. It was just, like, facts about the case, and this is happening, and that's happening, and that was it. There was, like, no comedy or anything. And I was like, this is really weird. It was just, like, I don't think I was doing anything. I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't doing anything else watching this episode. So I wasn't, like, distracted and missing stuff. it was just like a minor portion where I was like, there just hasn't been a joke. It felt like, it kind of felt like forever, and it was just like there just really has not been a joke, and I was like, this episode kind of bores me a little bit because there were no jokes, and really there was nothing happening either. To be totally honest, this whole episode nothing really happened until like the very end when the guy killed the girl. Because honestly, it was like, oh, Amara's here, but it didn't really do anything to like really push the plot forward. It was still sort of a monster of the week type of episode. Just Amara happened to be in it, and so they had a killer. They killed in the beginning. They killed, the mother of the inn, and then nothing happened. They figured out who the other killer was, and that was it. It was just like they had the facts. There weren't really any jokes or anything aside from when they first told the guy he had no soul, and Sam's like, "Could you be a little bit more honest?" He's like, "Hey," and that was pretty much it. And then the end of the episode, they get captured, and then the guy comes in and he saves them, and that was really it. Like there wasn't really anything happening in this episode, but it was definitely one that made me think by the end of it. And I guess it was just one of those things that by the time, like once it ended, it was like I still really enjoyed this episode because it still had the comedy in the beginning. If it was like the whole episode was just serious until like, like one moment or something, and then it had the cool ending, it wouldn't have been enough. But it still had its jokes in there. I don't know why I'm just really focusing on like one point. I was seriously just like, this episode kind of bores me because there were like no jokes, and it seemed like nothing at all was happening. They were just talking, and it was just like they were literally just getting facts, but it seemed like it lasted forever that they were just getting the facts. So I don't know why. I mean, it just stood out to me because I've never really thought like, oh, I'm just flat out bored. And admittedly, it may have been slightly due to the last episode being so awesome, and that was just full of a ton of comedy and action blended together in that last episode. So it's hard not to compare it, especially when it's an episode like the last one. It's hard not to, go back to like last week's episode and be like, man, that was, so much comedy and so much action, and then this episode. So I'm trying to be a little bit biased, even though, I mean, it's still the same series, so you can pick any episode to compare it to. But sometimes when it's as good as the last one, it's a little unfair. But once it rolled around to the end, I kind of enjoyed this one for sure because it gave me something interesting to think about just with that character. And this is one of the few moments I think I've ever even done this with this series. It might be the only time where I've honestly wondered like, what's really gonna happen with this character when they continue on. Like ultimately, he's not gonna be in the series, I'm sure, and it's just gonna be this guy in this episode didn't want to kill anyone, and so he said that he was the one that committed the crimes, and he turned himself in, and that's basically where his story ends. He goes to jail for killing 3 people, and that's it. And I would assume that would be like for the rest of his life, or at least for a super long time. But it just has me thinking, like, what's happening with this character now after he's done that. And like I said, it will ultimately be unimportant, totally insignificant. He's just one character that's going to show up and most likely never show up again unless they do end up finding a cure. And it's like, somehow let's get this guy out of prison after he turned himself in for, 3 murders. But I don't know, it just really got me thinking a lot by the end of it. It was just like, this is not a happy ending at all for this show. Like, they defeated the villain, but I don't know, it was just like a crazy ending where the guy who ultimately was innocent is the one who fell to these crimes because he didn't want to hurt anyone else, or he didn't want to actually hurt anyone for real. And it showed like even without his soul, he still had enough conscience in there to be a good person. And that's that's a part of where it just affects like the whole series. Like, it was just, we got to see new reactions to people losing their souls. So ultimately, I did actually really like this episode. It got me thinking at the end. It did have its jokes in there. There was just that one portion that for some reason just drove me nuts and actually made me feel a little bored. But I don't know how long that scene actually lasted, but other than that, like, that's just like one portion. And then as a whole, I still really like this episode because it just got me at the end. Like, it was just like something about it. It just kept me thinking. It just kept me thinking after the episode. It was one of those things where I just was just like, man, is really crappy. That's really messed up. But great episode for sure. Of course, I want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I definitely want to know what you guys thought about the reactions of these two characters having their souls taken from them, because this was new stuff, new territory for both of them, technically. Even though the woman, she had the more generic reaction to being a killer, she still had this sort of weird euphoria thing that went along with it. Like, I have to see Amara again because I felt great. I feel amazing now, and I have to be near her. Like, she's radiating just beauty or something. I don't know. And then the other guy was basically trying to stay human and, trying to be a human without a soul. And it was, both were fairly interesting and very different from what we've ever seen. So I liked them, but I do want to know what you guys thought. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.